Let's take a look at how adaptive panels are defined. It's very similar to the way adaptive components are defined, and knowing how you can change and modify those panels will give you great flexibility in creating panels to illustrate your design ideas. Now, this is one of the adaptive panels that's loaded into our 120C, 220C library. You see this is a rectangular panel that has an opening in the middle that is resizable. You can find all these panels out in the 120C library, just in the Adaptive Panels folder. So if you go to the Adaptive Panels, you'll find a big collection there of mostly rectangular panels, but we have some other ones. We have some 3-point panels and some 5-point panels. It's different ones that are necessary. But they're all defined in basically the same way, and we'll show you how that works. So if we want to create a new adaptive panel, here's what we do. We'll start by saying, again, it's new. It's a family. And if we go to the library in the English Imperial, we'll find curtain panel pattern based. When we bring that up, we get this very simple grid, a little rectangular grid of 4 points. Those are 4 adaptive points. Now the simplest panel would just be to actually go through and create a solid, just a solid surface that connects those 4 different points and the lines, the reference lines that connect them. And we could do that. We could just say, let's go through and create a form. And we can give it a thickness or just give it a plane. Okay. That's the simplest. That's actually an adaptive panel. And if we move one of the adaptive points, you'll see it resizes. It kind of changes and deforms, and that's the basis of how we go ahead and apply these to our surfaces that have all sorts of curvature to them. Okay, but we're going to do something a little bit different. Let's take this one panel out. Okay, we'll get back to those just reference lines which are defining the boundaries right now. Now the reference lines really drive the geometry. So we place reference lines and points on those reference lines, reference points, to go through and allow us to then define the edges and any points that define the shape of the panel. I'm going to define a little bit of a triangular panel and one that actually raises up in the middle, something that has a little peak to it. So to do that, what I'm going to do is actually create a new reference line. I'm going to just kind of break this into 2. So I'm going to 3D snap from here to there. Let me orbit that around a little bit so you can sort of see it a little better. So that's going to be the middle of our triangular panel. Okay, again, we could just go through and say that 1, 2, 3. We're going to create a panel. Like that. Okay, but again, we'll do something a little bit more elaborate than that. Okay, what I want to do is actually create something that has a little bit of thickness or can offset a little bit from the plane, and also something that I'll peak up in the center. So in the center of this triangle, I'd like it to kind of peak up like a little pyramid or half a pyramid. So let's think about how we want to do that. To make our little pyramid, we're going to define a point that's halfway along this line, and we want it to always be on that line no matter how that line gets deformed. So I'm going to come over and say that I want a reference point. Okay, but I'm going to be careful about how I place that. I want to make sure that it's placed on the plane of that line. So I'm going to pick that line, and then let's see if I can find the middle. There it is right there. So I've placed a point right in the center of that line. And I can check it's at 0.5. That's the parameter on the line. You could also check, it's a good idea to just always be flexing these things to make sure that the geometry is being defined the way you want it. If I pull that up, again, you'll sort of see that that follows. So it is truly on that line. Okay, so far so good. Okay, now I'd like to go through and define what I'll call a peakiness, some sort of a peak relative to that point. So what I'm going to do is something very similar. I'm going to go through and put another reference point just right on top of that, but then I'm going to give it an offset. I'm going to raise it up a little bit relative to where that's located. So I'll choose reference point again. Now this time, rather than being on the line, what I want to do is be relative to that point. So I'm going to say pick and come on over and tab a few times to make sure that I'm really on the plane of that point. And if I want it to be raised off the point right there, that'll be the plane that it'll be defined on. Okay, that's the plane, and now I got to place the point. Now it's going to warn me that there's two identical points, because there are, right on top of there. But I'm going to choose one of them. Notice that it's actually defined going down. Notice this now has an offset, okay, of 1.7, okay, or negative 1.7. Let's go ahead and make that a parametric value so we can control the height of that peak. What I can do is come over here to the offset, and say I'd like to associate a parameter, and then create a parameter. And I will say, okay, peak height. Now, the choice of whether it's a type or an instance parameter depends on whether you want to be able to change that from panel to panel. I'm going to make it an instance parameter, so I could actually have that respond to different values. Maybe something about how the sun's hitting it. So I'm going to make that an instance parameter. Let me change that. Great. Now let's go through and just try typing the value in there for that. Now again, it has this negative sense. I can kind of put a formula in there to kind of control that. Let's just go ahead and make it -2, -4. Okay, so it seems to be responding the way we want it to.